I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I appreciate it, taking the time to cover this press conference. This is a very important election in our province. The Sask United Party is dedicated to bringing good, common sense government to the people of Saskatchewan. The Sask Party has governed for 17 years, nearly an entire generation, but this is no longer the Sask Party of Brad Wall. Scott Moe and the Sask Party would like to make you think that this election is about the Saskatchewan NDP and Justin Trudeau. In reality, this election is 100% about the Sask Party government and their record. Crime is at an all-time high in Saskatchewan. Healthcare wait times and services are some of the worst in the country, and our education outcomes are rapidly declining year after year. This all in play while families are struggling to make ends meet. Out-of-control government spending, coupled with high taxes and failing services, have pushed hard-working Saskatchewan families to the brink. As I've been saying since the by-election, Saskatchewan doesn't have a money problem. It has a management problem. If these issues could be fixed with more money, they would have been fixed a long time ago. We firmly believe that good management is needed to cut the waste, streamline our services, and protect our communities. The status quo of the Sask Party and the NDP have had plenty of time to fix these issues. These issues are not new. Those who broke the system can't be relied on to fix it. New leadership is needed in Saskatchewan. Our party, the Saskatchewan United Party, was formed to offer a true conservative option to the problems that Saskatchewan faces today. Our blueprint for change is centered around the priorities of bringing affordable and a better quality of life to every family in Saskatchewan. With the rising costs of living weighing heavily on families, it is our elected officials' duty to step forward with solutions that directly ease the burden on their wallets and provide real support where it's needed most. Sask United will, number one, eliminate the provincial gas tax. Number two, cut the provincial sales tax in half to just 3%. And number three, provide a 65% discount on property taxes for our seniors living in their primary residences. By cutting the gas tax, the average family will save $600 per year at the pumps. By cutting the PST to 3%, the average family in Saskatchewan will save $1,400 per year. That's a combined savings of $8,000 over the next 4 years. The PST cut will be significant to the housing industry and businesses who export their products. By cutting the PST, these businesses will have more capital available to invest in Saskatchewan. Additionally, we want to provide direct relief to our seniors, many of whom are on fixed income and have felt the effects of inflation the hardest. Our seniors have built our communities, they've raised our families, and they've shaped the very fabric of our province. It's time we honor their sacrifices by introducing a 65% discount on property taxes for those over 65 on their primary residences. When it comes to Saskatchewan resource wealth, we believe that they must be harnessed to benefit our families and our citizens first. Sask United views it as the government's responsibility to ensure that the wealth of Saskatchewan resources are not exploited by big business, but rather benefits Saskatchewan families and communities first. Our resources need to follow the same royalty framework as our neighbors in Alberta and give the people of Saskatchewan the benefits they rightfully deserve. There is a reason why Alberta does not have a PEST. We are proposing a full royalty framework review on potash to ensure that the Saskatchewan people are receiving fair and equitable value for the world-class resource that the people of Saskatchewan own. When it comes to healthcare, we are committed to providing the best possible healthcare system for the people of Saskatchewan. We recognize that a strong healthcare system is essential for the well-being of our families and the prosperity of our society. To achieve this, we will be introducing the Saskatchewan Integrated Healthcare System. This will harness the innovation, efficiency, and expertise of the private sector to build out our healthcare infrastructure. Non-government private clinics could have the ability to build facilities and provide services to meet the demands of local communities while remaining fully publicly funded through government contracts. By allowing choice and competition in the delivery of healthcare services while retaining universal access for all, we will ensure that every citizen has access to world-class medical care that they deserve. To address the urgent need for more healthcare professionals in Saskatchewan, we will open up more medical school seats and residency spots here in the province. We will also implement a targeted recruitment strategy that focuses on attracting nurses, doctors, lab technicians, and other medical professionals from all universities and colleges in Canada. We will offer a program similar to the Royal Military College Officer Program, where students and new healthcare professionals will have their education paid for in exchange for a commitment to serve in Saskatchewan for a specified period of time. We understand that managing what we can manage is essential to delivering quality services and maximizing the impact of our investments. At Sask United, we recognize the vital role that parents play in the education and well-being of their children. Parents are the first and most influential teachers in a child's life, and their involvement in their children's education is paramount to their success and development. In my personal life, I was blessed because both my parents were teachers as well. We firmly believe it is essential that political bias and ideology are excluded from the education curriculum in Saskatchewan. Children should be equipped with the necessary skills to succeed in today's highly competitive global world, emphasizing core subjects such as reading, writing, mathematics, and an accurate representation of history. We would remove ideology in the education curriculum, ensuring schools are places of learning, not forums for activism and indoctrination. Additionally, we will implement standardized testing to address the current low rankings of our children in reading, writing, science, and mathematics compared to the rest of Canada. By adopting this approach, which is already used across the country, we can identify disconnects and develop effective strategies quickly to improve grades and foster students' success. By implementing these policies, we aim to create a culture of collaboration, transparency, and partnership between parents and educators. This will not only benefit the academic performance of students, but will also strengthen the connection between families and schools, which will strengthen the connection and the supports within our community. Since the Sask Party came to power in 2007, the size of government has increased by 41%. Scott Moe himself is responsible for over half of that bureaucratic growth in just 6 years. This growth under the Sask Party government has been focused on middle and upper management rather than frontline service staff. Under the current Scott Moe government, we have witnessed a trend of uncontrolled spending, gross mismanagement of our taxpayer dollars, and excessive growth of the size of government. We are overburdened in process after process with layers of middle management gatekeepers that add hurdles and roadblocks that make getting things done frustrating, time-consuming, but also very expensive. We need to cut this clutter. We need less government and more efficiency. Our policy of one in, two out is the first step in the right direction. We will introduce legislation where with every new regulation, two must be removed. We need a Saskatchewan where decision-making is streamlined, where red tape is drastically cut, and where every dollar is utilized efficiently. We are demanding accountability and results, not just big salaries and more bureaucracy. And finally, the safety and security of our families are paramount. A thriving and functioning society is built on the foundation of law and order. As Sask United government will make it clear that crime will not be tolerated in Saskatchewan. We are committed to putting criminals behind bars and ensuring that proper consequences are enforced. It is not enough to catch and release offenders. We must ensure that justice is served and that those who break the law face the full weight of its penalties. Sask United's plan is simple. Give the people the tools, the resources, and the flexibility they need to succeed, and then we will create a Saskatchewan where families flourish, where opportunities abound, and where every individual has the chance to build a better life for themselves and their loved ones. Thank you. All right, now we'll open up the floor for questions.
Can you explain this private sector involvement in healthcare delivery? Just to what extent and what services?
Yeah.
Hospitals or something?
Well, I mean, obviously it would start. So it's universal coverage. So the best way to understand it is the government is still the underwriter. But the service delivery would be opened up so that private sector could come in, physicians themselves, they could come in and build clinics. They could come in and set up, say, an MRI clinic and offer MRI testing and different things like that. Typically, what we've seen in other provinces that have started this is it's the testing side, which is the first side that gets opened up. I mean, at the end of the day, we know that the government of Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Health Authority, knows exactly what everything costs. And so if we open it up and allow the private sector to come in, build it out, say for every MRI, this is the amount of money you're going to get. That just opens up capacity for the people of Saskatchewan. And the beauty of opening it up to the private sector, it allows the private sector to come in and build the bricks and mortar. We've seen, with the cost overruns at the PA hospital expansion and retrofit in PA going from, in 2020 at $200+ million to 2021 $300+ million to now shovels in the ground at $900+ million. Saving capital when it comes to healthcare just allows us to utilize that capital to direct it to frontline services, frontline staff, as well as the recruitment strategy that we were talking about. So we believe opening that up, allowing some competition, basically, a lot of physicians, they're quite entrepreneurial. They want to have their own clinics. They want to be able to build and grow their own practice and their own business, like law firms do. So why disallow that? And it's going to benefit the people of Saskatchewan.
We seem to already have that. We have private MRI clinics. We have actually even more than that. We have private surgical clinics where they do surgery. And the PA hospital is an entire hospital, not an MRI clinic. So I'm just not clear where you're going that's different than the Sask party. Would you have a private hospital, for example?
Well, I could see eventually getting to that place, but right now I don't think that would happen. Like, really, at the end of the day, what we're targeting is to open it up to the private sector such that they can come in and deliver services. They'll know exactly how much money they're going to be paid for those services, and then they can take that risk on. They can hire their staff, and they can deliver those services. The MRI work that was done previously in the province, where it was they had to do 2 for every one that was private, and it was paying extra and different things like that. I mean, we're not talking that. We're talking about a universal system that is more closely aligned with, say, Europe or the Scandinavian countries, where the government is still the underwriter. I'm not talking about private insurance whatsoever on this. The government is still the underwriter, and there's different service providers that can come in and do that.
Unlimited? Because right now it seems to kind of be, when the government decides we need another MRI, they let the private sector build one. But in American states, I think you can build as many as you want.
Well, that's the beauty of the private sector, because why would they overbuild, right? Because if they can't make a return for it, they're not going to overbuild capacity. So they'll build to meet the needs of the market, but they won't necessarily overbuild. And if they do overbuild, well, then that would be their problem, right? So rather than the government doing it.
How does a third party exercise that influence on investigating, because you're looking at 23 candidates right now. I don't know if you'll get to enough to potentially form government. It's hard to get everybody elected. What's the strategy in terms of influencing government policy if you don't form government, which is going to be a tough haul for this time, obviously?
Right. Yeah, so we're at 23 candidates. We've got a good bunch that are ready to be announced here over the next coming 9 days. So we're targeting to be right around that 35 candidates in total. But the reality of the situation is, like, what's our goal in this election? Our goal in this election is to win seats. You know, win as many, of course, that we can. But at the same time, we firmly believe that between the Sask Party and the NDP, that there is a bunch of this province that is not being represented in the legislature. And so by having us there, by, you know, being even on the opposition front, we're able to have the conversations and be able to steer the conversations and steer the different arguments, and to represent a very significant portion of Saskatchewan residents. So that's the whole goal, and basically the whole reason we started this party is we felt that the Sask Party had really walked away from its base and the values that its base has, and there was a void there. So we came to fill the void. You know, our target is to win, you know, 2 seats plus. Of course, we want to win as many as we can, but at the same time, you know, we need to get some people elected that have some management expertise and some management, you know, some push to basically hold the government to account. You have the NDP, they've been in opposition for 17 years, and yet, frankly, the Sask Party's been able to run roughshod for 17 years on just about everything. So that's why we need an opposition on the right to come in and be looking at it from a different perspective. So.
One more for me. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking you're looking at about $2 billion in the gas tax and the PST cut.
Correct.
Annually, how do you make up the difference in revenue when you've got a lot of other ambitious ideas like senior support and more policing, et cetera, that all cost money, even having healthcare workers?
Right. No.
Isn't going to be offset by whatever reduction you can have in service.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's the 3% of the PST is 1.5 billion, and the gas tax is roughly 500 million. So on the PST front, that's why we got to make up 1.5 billion. That's where the potash royalty review comes in. This has been something that, you know, economists on both sides of the spectrum have been pushing Saskatchewan to do for the last 10 to 12 years. I mean, realistically, that framework was put in place in the 90s, and it was tweaked a little bit under Eric Klein in the early 2000s. The potash pricing regime at that time averaged about 160 to 170 US a ton. Since then, since the Sask Party's come to power, the price of potash has averaged closer to 500 US a ton, and the capacity has grown so much. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different pieces of the framework, but the main piece of the framework where the people of Saskatchewan can actually get money, you know, get some value from it is on the profit tax side. So basically, you got gross revenue minus their cost equals their profit. But what happened was in the framework from the 90s and early 2000s, they exempted a lot of the future production because they didn't see where the industry was going to go. So currently today, 35% of the potash that's produced in Saskatchewan is exempted from that profit tax. When BHP brings on their latest expansion here, it's going to be 65% of the potash produced is actually exempted.
Billion, that's a big hit, John. And secondly, I don't think the potash company is going to be in love with your plan.
Oh, I guarantee they won't be in love with the plan, 100%. But at the end of the day, potash is a very rare commodity. There's only 3 jurisdictions that have it that are in globally to the extent Saskatchewan does. Saskatchewan's number 1. Number 2 is Belarus. Number 3 is Russia. Belarus, it's nationalized. And Russia, unless you're paying in gold bars, you're going to have problems doing some business there. So, I mean, Saskatchewan is in a very strategic position with respect to the potash business, and we need to make sure that the people of Saskatchewan are definitely getting their fair share for it. So, yeah, there's going to be pushback, and you know, but sometimes that's why we need to elect leaders that have the that have the stomach to be able to put the people of Saskatchewan first, because currently that's just not taking place. The Sask party themselves knew this in 2015, because in 2014, as you all know, the price of oil fell, so the government of Saskatchewan was having a spending problem, so they needed some revenue. They looked at doing the potash royalty review then. Of course, the potash companies pushed back on that, so they decided to abandon it, and a year and a half later instituted an increase of PST and applied it to a bunch more things that the PST had never been applied to before. So basically, they chose to put their spending issues onto the people of Saskatchewan. Well, we want to correct that because potash is rare. Potash to Saskatchewan is like oil and gas is to Alberta. Alberta's royalty framework for their oil and gas is very fair, it's very equitable, it's a good balance between both. So we want to bring the same type of thing here. The other component of where we're going to find the money on, say, the 3% of PST is with respect to the just overall government spending. As an example, from 2019 to 2024, the government salaries, excluding pensions, have grown by 23%. That amount, that growth of 23% equals $1.4 billion. So we know that there is a lot of there's a lot of process and there's a lot of blank space going on over at the within the budget of the government. I've looked through their budgets and their financial statements. They're wasting and spending a lot of money. We do know that it's not going to front line. So that's why we're going to audit. We're going to do audit of management and management processes in order to find some money with respect to that. Did you want me to answer where the PST or the gas tax is coming from? Because that one. You're done. Go ahead. Okay. So the gas tax, that's the $500 million, right? So where that money is going to come from, we're going to take the money that's in the OBPS program. So that's that output-based performance system. That's Saskatchewan's own carbon levy that is applied to the large emitters in the province. That it's roughly equivalent to the same amount of money that the gas tax is. So we're just going to give it right back to the people. So.
When it comes to attracting potash to the province, I mean, there's already been difficulty in getting the mines up and running, and I suppose if you're imposing additional levies on it, are you convinced, or how do you know, or what can you say that would actually bring those companies? So I understand that it's a jurisdictional issue, there are 3 main places in the world where you can get it.
Right.
But already with the exemptions that exist, there's been difficulty in getting mines up and operation.
Yeah, but I would challenge that premise about it being difficult to get it up and running. Like if BHP wasn't going to do it, someone else would, because that market it's a great market, and the price of potash, like you can make a very significant return in potash at today's prices. So if BHP or Nutrien or Mosaic wasn't going to fill the market, another company would come in to fill that market, because it's that in demand globally. Because we know we're exporting it to Brazil, we're exporting to Malaysia, Indonesia, and China. That's our main market, right? We don't use it ourselves. Like we don't need to. The types of crops we grow, we hardly need any. But so. I mean, I've heard like that's been something that's been pushed to make it look like, well, these guys are, we're so grateful. We're grateful for them to come and, develop potash here. I would argue that, of course, we're happy when a big multinational wants to come and invest in Saskatchewan. Of course, that's great. But at the same time, where else are they going to go invest it? There's no other place that you can find the potash that we have. I mean, you can go do a deal with Putin and try to go there, but Belarus, you're locked out. So, I mean, we're already coming from a position of strength. So I think that's why potash is not like oil and gas. Oil and gas is found all over the world. There's pockets of it all over the world. Whereas, man, like this potash, it is so rare. It's a rare commodity. And that's why we need to, put together a panel, just like other jurisdictions do when they're looking at it, and then come up with a plan, and then there of course would be a phase-in approach. I think the biggest negotiating component, or the stickiness of it, would be the term of phase-in. Typically, right now our potash producers, when they spend capital, they're allowed to write off 120% of that capital cost. In what businesses are you allowed to write off 120%? I could see 100%, like over time, 100% of the capital cost, but 120, to me, it doesn't make any sense, so.
You mentioned within education wanting to have an accurate representation of history. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is this whole idea that history can change based upon where you're at in society today. Like, if you have history that's, say, from 200 years ago, obviously, when you look at it today, our lenses are a little different from where the people were at that point in time. So what I'm talking about is history is history. There's been mistakes that have been made. There's been good things that have been done. Don't apologize for it. It is what it is, and that is what it is. And because to look at history today, from what we know today and the different processes we have, and just from where we're at as a society today compared to where we were at, say, 500 years ago, whatever. And basically what tends to happen is you can kind of rewrite it in such a way that it would benefit you politically or things like that. And I just totally disagree with that. I think history is history. We learn from history. We learn from the mistakes of history rather than utilizing it all the time in order to try to benefit or to push a political purpose.
What would mean treaty teachings in schools and things like that? Because there's been a huge emphasis and there's a pretty good argument. The problem was treaties weren't properly in the first place, so that's...
Yeah, you're not wrong with that. Like talking about treaties in schools, there's nothing wrong with talking about treaties in schools. Absolutely, because that is a piece of history. Just like the Indian Act, talking about the Indian Act in history. Like we're still abide under the Indian Act, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I've got no issues with that. I do take exception if it's like if you're considering that you're always if you're always in a position whereby, at this point in time, where we're at in society, I mean, you've got to judge things within historical context. And that's something that needs to be addressed.
What makes
Do you have an example of something?
indoctrination in schools? What do you mean by indoctrination in schools, and what makes you say?
Indoctrination in schools, what I'm talking about more with respect to that is, I'm talking about a lot of social issues. See, I was raised by two parents. Or two teachers that were both parents. And I mean, the social issues that we talked about in school were not the social issues that we talk about today in school. And I get it, society changes, and our schools and our education is downstream of society. But at the same time, is that necessarily the right forum to necessarily have these discussions? To me personally, I firmly believe that a lot of the discussions that people want to have at schools, that's discussions that should be had at the family level. I think schools need to be focused on reading, writing, arithmetic, on things of that nature, on history, on English and understanding that, and being able to really compete in a global market. And that's why we want to bring standardized testing in, and to ensure that we get, and we're ensuring that the foundations of why kids go to school in the first place is the main reason why they're there, and be able to do that.
Framework on potash. Are you afraid that you could possibly scare away other industries if they come and invest, and then the rules get redrawn? Let's say 10 years down the road after they've already put in, possibly billions in capital investments, that you might scare away investment in other areas?
I think what it would show is, because there's lots of economic and research data on this from economists that have done a lot of work on it, that if you can show that you're putting together a framework that is fair and that ensures that that the multinationals' cost of capital is being met, that would actually give some stability to go forward, rather than just to create risk. Realistically, across the globe, royalties change all the time. They change all the time. They change as markets change. But what we're talking about in potash, I'm talking about a 20-year difference in potash. So the royalty framework, That was all done 20 years ago. It's normal. It's normal in the resource world where I come from that governments sit down and they rejig, and they're, of course, in collaboration with the industry to make sure that that the frameworks are in aligned with where the global market has gone. So I don't view that as a big risk at all. If anything, like, that's why I think that you have to do it from the perspective of, you got to make sure that, you know, you've got the right experts at the table. Of course, you have the companies at the table, but also that you have a defined goal. And your goal is to ensure that the people of Saskatchewan are collecting their fair share from royalties. So, you know.
In your education platform, it talks about an opt-in policy. What would parents be opting into?
Yeah, so opt-in, so the opt-in would be things of the very sensitive nature. So I'm talking about things like sex ed, stuff like that. I'm talking about things that are, you know, quite social, you know, because every parent's got a little bit different level of tolerance when it comes to social issues and what they want their kids exposed to, or even involved in a discussion without the parents being there. So if we could have a system with opt-in whereby it would increase the communication between the schools and the parents such that that allows the autonomy of the family and the autonomy of the parents to be able to make those decisions, such that then you don't have the reverse. So the reverse is if there's no communication, and if and then a parent finds out, then they're freaking out and they're losing their mind, and then that just creates issues, because then it causes problems with the teachers, it causes problems with the parents, and then they tend to get, you know, extreme, rather than if you would have it all up front and be, you know, today we are going to be talking about, you know, sex ed and, you know, different things of that nature, you know, sensitive social stuff, then at least the parents can make the decision.
Like what?
Given-
Like, you keep saying sensitive social stuff and social stuff. Can you be a bit more specific with what specifically is?
Well, I'm like, sex ed is one, genders are another, you know, gender. Talking about gender is another. Parents are sensitive with respect to that. So that is something that that parents need to be involved with in that conversation.
Given that Saskatchewan has the highest teen pregnancy rate in the country, among the highest when it comes to STDs like syphilis, is it a good idea to make things like sex ed even marginally less accessible when it comes to an opt-in policy?
Yeah, I don't think that would change anything with respect to, you know, the healthcare side of that at all.
You don't think education on contraception?
No, we've been talking about that I remember talking about that when I was a kid, when I was, at least when I was 15 or 16 years old, you know, talking about the importance of condoms and the importance of this and you know, to ensure safe sex and such. So, I mean, to me, I really don't think that, I mean, it's had over 30 years of play, that one. And I mean, if we're struggling with that, you know, we're still struggling with it.
But that was before the days of AIDS, before a lot of things, you know, at least I'm old enough to remember before those days. I don't know if you were, like, certainly the change. Like, I mean, obviously kids have to be more aware these days and things like that than maybe we were ours.
Yeah, but if kids need to be aware, like, that's where the parents' role is, to come in and help them to be aware of that. I mean, if parents don't want to have that conversation with their parents or with their children, if parents don't want to have that conversation with their kids, well, that's too bad, you know, because they should. But
Well, it is more than too bad. It puts people at risk if they don't understand, doesn't it?
But we already have those discussions at school with respect to, you know, condom use and things like that already.
That's
So.
how you're opposing it, so I'm taking it.
No, but what I'm talking about is, if we're talking about that still is considered a social issue. And then the parents, because in reality, if the parents knew that they were going to be talking about that, so then the parents are given the choice to be like, okay, should we talk about this at school, at home, or should we talk about it at school? Because a lot of parents would be like, oh, we've already talked about that. We're already, you know, my kid, I believe, is prepared for, you know, a world where that, you know, they could be exposed to that, and I'm comfortable with them being in that position. And maybe they feel that they don't even need to partake in what the school has to offer with respect to that. You know, like already in Saskatchewan here, we're supposed to have a ban on, you know, third-party providers coming in. So basically it's the teachers talking about it, or, so it's basically biology and sociology, more focused teachers talking about that. And I mean, a lot of parents have a good enough background to be able to navigate those.
So I'm just wondering, what's an example of indoctrination?
We already addressed that. We were already talking about it.
You did say that there are sensitive issues, but you didn't really zero down on what these sensitive issues are.
I did. I just talked about it for like 15. Oh, indoctrinate. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, with respect to indoctrination, I'm talking about like, causing, pushing children towards different kinds of agendas, for example. There's been some really good work done on and some polling done on this, where what parents are looking for is they're looking for more of a balanced argument over different things. Like climate change is a good example. Like me, I'm a petroleum engineer by trade. I understand that the climate's changed. It's been changing since the beginning and will change long after I'm gone. But this whole idea of pushing, we're in a climate crisis and scaring kids to the point where they, that, to me, that's going too far. That's going too far, because you should push the other side. There's just as many scientists that I know. I do believe in man-made global warming to a certain extent, yes. The extent of the man-made global warming, because man always has an effect on its environment. Always. So yes, I do. But the extent of what it's portrayed or pushed that is due to man, I don't agree with that. And to me, the biggest issue that I have is I disagree completely with the demonization of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the gas of life. It's plant food. We understand that here in Saskatchewan. And without it, all life ceases to exist. So, and CO2 is the crux by which the net zero regulations all base upon. So when they changed that definition of CO2, they changed it to call it a pollutant. They put it on the list, same with the plastics. Okay, that list, they basically criminalized it. I 100% disagree with that, because in reality, in our atmosphere today, the concentration of CO2 is about 400 parts per million. The concentration of CO2 that is ideal for plant growth is between 1,200 and 1,400 parts per million. That's why greenhouses, it's 3 times what the current atmospheric concentration is. That's why greenhouses use CO2 generators. So the idea that, if we don't abide and push net zero, because in reality, net zero in and of itself really only exists on a spreadsheet. In reality, it actually doesn't exist, because, to basically remove all carbon production, like basically you're banned, like what the carbon tax is, it's a tax on combustion, right? We don't understand that. So it's a tax on combustion. To remove that and to get it to a place where we can't combust anything anymore is, I just don't see that happening. And I just don't see where the population, the people of Saskatchewan, want to live in an environment whereby, you're running the risk, well, more than running the risk. You're going to eliminate the agriculture industry. You're going to eliminate oil and gas. You're going to eliminate industrial production. And I don't think people want to live in that world.
Would you be having a conversation about addressing climate change and all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, with respect to, when it comes to climate change, I'm more interested in having policy discussions as it relates to insurance. That's more what I'm interested in. So it's talking about making your economy as robust as it can be against different kinds of shocks, because as you know, the globe has got a lot more people on it, and there's more environmental challenges with respect to that. Now, when I talk environment, I'm talking clean air, clean soils, clean water. So I'm separating that completely. Climate change, I've got no issues talking about climate change, and talking about different things like that. I do have an issue with net zero. Net zero to me, and that's where I 100% disagree with Scott Moe. Scott Moe says I'm against the carbon tax, but I'm for net zero. Sask Power themselves has already come out and says we're going to have to spend $52 billion to hopefully reach our net zero goals by 2050. Hopefully. 52, that's equivalent, there's only 25 years left to 2050. That's equivalent to almost the education budget. Like, we need to start having some real conversations about this to be like, well, is that realistic? Is it not? How much carbon do we have to capture? Do we need to capture carbon? Different things like that. So, yeah, I like to have conversations related to that, absolutely. But with respect to climate change, I want to have the most robust, you know, the goal of the government here in Saskatchewan, especially because we have the Crowns, so the government is directly involved in that, is to ensure that the people of Saskatchewan have affordable, reliable energy. It's flipping minus 45 here. We need that. So, you know, that's my focus as it relates to that.
One last question.
When you talk about social issues, again, I just want to narrow down your social issue in the classroom. Having a gay pride week, for example, or painting rainbows out on the sidewalk, things like that, would that be an example of indoctrination or something parents would have to opt in or opt out or not be allowed at all in the schools?
I wouldn't say, like, yeah, so that would be an example of one where children could get the, you know, the parents would have the opportunity to opt in and opt out. Absolutely. If they wanted to participate in that, then they can make that call. They can make that call rather than the kids, you know, being, you know, having to do it. They can make that call for sure. And
The school could still have it. They would pick it, the parents would pick whether they want the children to take part.
the school, I mean, currently, under the current legislation in Saskatchewan, the schools can still have that. If this, as long as, you know, they give notice to the parents. That's what we're saying on the opt-in side of it, to give notice to the parents. So, but that's an example of that, yes.
Thank you guys very much. We really appreciate it.